everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com back again with some more lovely wrestling news. We've got news from all over the place. We've got some WWE news, we've got some Japanese wrestling news. It's all fun and it's all important stuff. We've also got a bit of AEW news as well. So without any further ado, let's take a look at those headlines. First of all, a WWE Superstar has apparently been pulled from Monday Night Raw. Next up, we take a look at reportedly the original plans for Otis. And finally, we explore the reason behind Vince McMahon's recent change of mask policy at the Performance Center. So there's been some recent weird news coming out about Kairi Sane and her position in WWE. Last week, in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, Meltzer reported that the plan was apparently for Kairi Sane to suffer a kayfabe career-ending injury, be removed from our screens, and then Asuka would seek revenge at SummerSlam. Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful suggested around the same time as well that the plan was originally for Sane to be removed from, Raw and SmackDown and instead become kind of an ambassador for WWE back in her home country of Japan, presumably, I guess, to try and make inroads towards the formation of an NXT Japan or a similar sort of setup. But obviously, if those plans were true, they were kind of nixed by the whole global pandemic that's going on. So, what's going on with Kairi Sane now? Well, today we have another bit of a strange update. WWE recently advertised that a match will be happening on tonight's Monday Night Raw between Asuka and Bayley, a champion versus champion match, the Raw Women's Champion Asuka and the SmackDown Women's Champion Bayley, with Kairi Sane in Asuka's corner and Sasha Banks in Bayley's corner. But over the weekend, all mention of Kairi Sane was removed from this match preview, essentially, and WWE even put out a tweet recently, which is a match graphic for that bout that's happening tonight, and you've got Asuka on one side on her own, then you've got Bayley on the other side of the graphic with Sasha, a smaller image of Sasha representing that she's in her corner, but Kairi Sane is nowhere to be seen. So it seems if we put all these clues together, as though Kairi Sane was going to be written off screen at some point, maybe even as soon as tonight's Raw or next week's Raw or somewhere in the build-up, maybe to SummerSlam a little bit down the line. But now, because of just various different circumstances, some of them that we have no idea about, have just decided to pull her from TV, and that's it. Now, there is, I suppose, every chance that we could see Kairi again, and if she is indeed leaving WWE, she could get sort of a send-off or a last appearance or a final match or something like that. But at the same time, it doesn't really bode well that she's just been pulled from even a role as Asuka's ringside, manager effectively on a standard episode of Monday Night Raw. And it's a tremendous shame, obviously, because Kairi is such a tremendous and talented wrestler. There are various reasons why, her regular appearance on WWE TV may be ending. Could be because she wants to. Maybe she wants to go back to Japan. Maybe that's something she was in favor of. There were reports, of course, that she recently got married as well. Maybe she just wants to focus on her private life, and that's totally understandable. But at the same time, it's hard not to look at this as another example of WWE calling up somebody from NXT with a whole world of potential and then kind of not really knowing what to do with them once they're on Raw or SmackDown. Now let's go to an update on a member of the SmackDown roster, Otis, formerly known of course as Otis Dozovich, and let's take a look at the original plans for him before things changed for whatever reason. So this comes courtesy of Ringside News, who reported a while ago that apparently it was Vince McMahon who really was delighted with Otis and thought he was a great wrestler and deserved to be pushed. It was Vince McMahon who was very much behind his push, apparently. And apparently loads of plans have changed in WWE over the past few weeks and months, but apparently Ringside News are reporting that Otis's plans specifically have also changed, and that originally winning the Money in the Bank briefcase was supposed to be his big crowning moment, but now it doesn't seem that way. Apparently, Otis winning the briefcase at Money in the Bank was going to lead him into a feud with The Fiend somewhere down the line. But now it seems as though, The Fiend is feuding with Braun Strowman, and we'll just have to see what happens. And once again, Ringside News have said that the wording given to them was Otis and briefcase, who knows? That's the exact wording of their source, Otis and briefcase, who knows? So it seems like whatever plans WWE had in place for Otis have been, for whatever reason, kind of pushed to the side. And Ringside News have again noted what a lot of us know about WWE, which is that, because it gets reported everywhere, which is that Vince McMahon is apparently just constantly asking for things to be rewritten, rebooked. He changes things on the fly all the time, and that's not a situation specific to the current lockdown and all the different things going on in the world today. That was the case last year and even before that. But the problem here is, of course, that if WWE want to de-push Otis or stop his push for whatever reason, even though it's a bit of a strange one because look how popular the guy was in that whole Ziggler storyline. But apparently if they want to de-push Otis, that's going to be an issue because he's still Mr. Money in the Bank. That means that they're going to have to, probably do a Baron Corbin with him, have him waste his cash in potentially embarrassing fashion. They don't need to do it in embarrassing fashion. They could have him heroically go down in a title shot for the ages. But it's Otis, so they'll probably have him fall on his arse or something. And so that seems to be the situation. One that I hope isn't true. I hope this news story isn't true, or plans change back to the way they originally were, because when Otis won that Money in the Bank briefcase, I was like, this is great, this is different, it's going to lead somewhere down the line, I can't wait to see it, and now it looks like that's not going to happen. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see where it goes, but yeah, for Otis fans out there, a little bit of disheartening news. Speaking of Vince McMahon, now let's go to Fightful, who are reporting on apparently the reason why Vince McMahon changed his policy towards the wearing of masks in the crowd at the Performance Center. Because if you've watched the product recently, you'll notice that suddenly they've started wearing masks, whereas previously, to quite a lot of criticism, masks were not in place. This is apparently due to an unnamed Raw Superstar who apparently returned to the tapings last week after a brief time away from the show and approached Vince McMahon and just genuinely expressed their concerns. Now from that, we can potentially gather that it's probably a superstar with quite a lot of clout backstage to secure a one-on-one meeting with Vince McMahon and then express their concerns and have Vince listen and take that on board. That's got to be someone with quite a bit of name value. But Fightful say that Vince took note of these concerns and has now imposed, a compulsory rule you have to wear masks in the crowd, and also apparently a fine as well if that rule is broken. According to Fightful, the reason that Vince didn't enforce this rule earlier is simply because during the tapings he's always in his office, even though he sometimes comes back and forth from gorilla position. Often he's in his office and just doesn't see firsthand what's going on in the crowd and how close everybody is together and the lack of masks and that sort of thing. Which sounds strange because you'd think that you'd maybe watch your own product and notice these things, but I'm not there, I don't know what goes on. And apparently WWE have also made a few changes backstage to ease the fears of their talent, especially with Florida at the moment being such a nasty area in terms of the infection rate and everything like that. Apparently one of these changes was to start taping Raw and SmackDown entirely separately, meaning that fewer people are in place at one time at the Performance Center per taping. Now let's head over to Sports Illustrated, where Justin Barrasso was talking to the New Japan Pro Wrestling president, or chairman, Harold Meij. Oh no, apparently it's president, yeah, okay. The New Japan president, Harold May. Now, he was asking him about the likelihood of the G1 Climax taking place later this year. If you're unfamiliar with New Japan, the G1 Climax is their big annual tournament where it takes place over like many weeks. There's two groups, it's all round robin, and then the winners of the two groups go into the final, and the winner gets a title shot at Wrestle Kingdom the following January. Wrestle Kingdom being New Japan's WrestleMania equivalent. Now, even before the whole pandemic, New Japan had decided to slightly alter the placing of the G1 Climax in the year because of the Tokyo Olympics, which were of course supposed to take place in 2020. So they moved the G1 Climax, which usually takes place in August, like in summertime, a little bit further back towards the end of the year in the autumn. So May had this to say, as a result of the now postponed Tokyo Olympics, we had already decided to move our annual G1 Climax tournament, which traditionally takes place during the summer months, to the autumn. It is still on the calendar, although again, venues and crowd capacity will be dependent on both our own and the local government's guidelines. As for our previously scheduled tours like Best of the Super Juniors, both fans and wrestlers alike were disappointed at their cancellation. All of those voices will be taken into account in the second half of this year, as we look to present something to fans that matches or even surpasses our initial plans. Now, New Japan are running shows in, I believe, the Osaka Dome on July 11th and 12th with a reduced capacity, I think like 1/3 capacity of their usual building's allowance. They are going to be the final of the New Japan Cup between, well, I might not spoil it. If you want to check out the results, go online and do that. But the final of the New Japan Cup, and then the winner of that match has a title match with Tetsuya Naito. Following on from the New Japan Cup final, the next night, it's Dominion, which is like New Japan's SummerSlam. It's a big show, and that again will be in front of a reduced capacity crowd. And finally, let's look at an interview with former New Japan star and current AEW star Kenny Omega with the website The Natural Aristocrat. Ooh. In the interview, Omega suggests that he thought and wanted to be at the G1 Supercard show in Madison Square Garden, despite being already heavily involved with AEW and having left New Japan. From his words here, it seems like Kenny thought he was going to be able to rock up at that show. That show, of course, took place in Madison Madison Square Garden over last year's WrestleMania weekend, and the main event saw Kazuchika Okada take back the title from Jay White, with many reports suggesting that Jay White was Omega's replacement in that storyline and that he should have been main eventing Madison Square Garden. Omega says, "Oh, we all thought I was going to be there, even though I'd already been involved with the AEW project at that point and everybody knew my intentions of going there. It was always my hope that I could still be a part of that show. But you know, things happen. It was just a preference that there was no one from AEW there to represent on that card." Kenny goes on, "But I was always ready, willing and able. I still feel that it's a shame that it couldn't have happened because there was nothing on my end that had caused that to happen. But I understand there's not just a service to the fans, but there's a very unknown business side to everything we do. Whether it be in wrestling or fear of working any kind of job, there's a hierarchy and there's stuff that happens behind closed doors that no one ever hears or talks about. And those decisions were made without my involvement, and it was decided that I wouldn't be on the show." So it seems like at first there was a possibility that Kenny could have been on the New Japan show despite having already left them and set up All Elite Wrestling. But things happened, plans changed, and they didn't want anyone from AEW being there. Now, it would have been entirely possible for people from AEW to have been on that show because they didn't have a show at WrestleMania weekend. They were one of the few big promotions not to run a show in, where was it? New York that year. God, time's moving so weirdly right now. And if you remember rightly as well, New Japan ran that show alongside Ring of Honor. The Ring of Honor sections of that show, of course, were hugely criticised, especially the involvement of Enzo Amore and Big Cass from the crowd, which people thought was a work and some thought was a shoot. And apparently the New Japan wrestlers weren't even notified about this happening. But it's all, you know, that's all extra details. The point here is that Kenny Omega wanted to be part of the show, but New Japan decided no AEW involvement. I can see reasons for and against that, to be honest. I don't certainly think that they are harsh or unnecessarily, you know, evil in blocking the appearance of All Elite Wrestling because they're major competitors, but at the same time, I don't know, it would have just been nice to have seen them. So that's it for today's news video. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Jack from Cultaholic.com. Let me know what you thought about any of these stories down in the comment section below. Stay safe out there, stay positive, and I'll see you soon.